The alarms at ADX Florence screamed through the night like dying sirens. Red lights flashed across the narrow concrete corridors, throwing shadows of guards running in every direction. Unit Delta 2, lockdown. Lockdown, a voice shouted over the radio. But it was already too late. Inside the most secure prison in America, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, an inmate was gone. Not dead. Not moved. Gone. The cameras caught nothing but static. The motion sensors, usually so sensitive they could pick up a mouse, hadn't triggered once. His cell, made of reinforced steel and concrete, stood empty, the metal door still locked from the inside. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The guards stared at the empty room in disbelief. The nameplate on the door read, Daniel Reese, inmate #48291-066. Daniel Reese had just done what no one in history had ever done. He had escaped from ADX Florence. The warden's voice echoed through the control room. "How did this happen?" he shouted. "He's not Houdini. Nobody escapes this place." But Daniel wasn't just any prisoner. He was a man who had spent 10 years studying every inch of the prison system, every camera angle, every guard's routine, every sound that echoed off the cold concrete walls. And on that freezing Colorado night, he made his move. Now, with search helicopters slicing through the dark and dozens of armed officers combing the desert outside, Daniel Reese was already miles away, or so it seemed. But how did he do it? How could someone break out of a prison built to be escape-proof? That's where the story begins. 10 years earlier, Daniel Reese wasn't a killer or a thief. He was a systems engineer from Chicago, a quiet man who loved puzzles and hated rules. But when he uncovered a secret about the company he worked for, a powerful defense contractor, everything in his life changed. Daniel had found evidence that the company was secretly selling government technology to criminal groups overseas. When he tried to expose them, they framed him. The evidence vanished, his accounts were frozen, and he was accused of hacking into classified systems. Within months, he went from respected engineer to America's most wanted cybercriminal. The trial was quick and unfair. The company's lawyers crushed him. Daniel stood in court, staring at the judge as the sentence was read, 30 years in federal prison, without parole. But it wasn't just any prison. They sent him to ADX Florence, a place meant for terrorists, serial killers, and gang lords. Men like the Unabomber. Men like El Chapo. The day he arrived, a guard told him, "You'll die here, Reese." Everyone does. But Daniel only smiled. "We'll see." ADX Florence was built to destroy a man's mind. Every cell was a concrete box. Prisoners lived 23 hours a day in isolation. Their windows were only 4 inches wide, angled so they couldn't see the mountains, only the sky. Guards watched through cameras 24/7. Doors opened with magnetic locks that could crush steel. Even the air vents were too small for a person to crawl through. Escape was impossible. At least, that's what they thought. Daniel spent his first few years silent, obedient, and invisible. He followed every rule, never caused trouble, and never talked about his case. But behind that calm face, he was planning. He learned the guards' names, the times they switched shifts, the sound of footsteps in each corridor. He noticed when power flickered during storms, and how long it took the backup generators to kick in. He even memorized the timing of the automatic door cycles, when the magnetic locks released for just a fraction of a second. Most inmates used their hour of recreation time to walk in circles or shout at the sky. Daniel used his to test things, like how sound traveled through the concrete walls, or how light flickered from the security tower's floodlights. Little by little, he built a map of the prison inside his mind. Every vent, every corridor, every weak spot. Then came the test. One morning, during breakfast delivery, Daniel spoke to a young guard named Officer Miller. He had seen Miller drop his security keycard earlier that week. Instead of reporting it, Daniel had quietly kicked it toward the wall and pretended not to notice. Now, he wanted to see if Miller could be manipulated. "You ever feel like you're trapped here too?" Daniel asked quietly, his voice calm. Miller gave him a strange look. "You're the one behind bars, not me." Daniel smiled faintly. "You go home, but you come back every day, same routine, same walls. You ever think maybe this place is the real cell?" The guard hesitated, just for a moment. That was all Daniel needed. He had found his weak spot. From then on, he built a quiet friendship with Miller, offering him advice, harmless conversation, even helping him with his night classes by suggesting essays through the food slot. It was all part of the plan. By his 8th year, Daniel had earned model prisoner status, small privileges like access to library books and the workshop. That's where he started building small devices under the guise of repairing maintenance tools. Bits of metal here, a broken magnet there, even a stolen wire or two from a damaged heater. Tiny pieces, harmless alone, but together, they meant something. The guards never noticed. Why would they? No one had ever escaped ADX Florence before. Then, one night, during a thunderstorm, the prison's lights flickered, just like Daniel had predicted. The backup generators took 6 seconds to activate. That was his window. He used the magnetized wire to override the cell's lock, a move he had practiced in theory hundreds of times in his head. To the system, it looked like a power surge. The door clicked open. His heart pounded so loud he thought the cameras could hear it. He crawled out, moving through the shadows, counting the seconds between camera rotations. Everything was going according to plan, until a sound stopped him cold. Footsteps. He froze against the wall. It was Officer Miller, the one man who could destroy everything. Miller's flashlight swung toward Daniel, and for a long second, they stared at each other in silence. Then, the unthinkable happened. Miller turned off the light. He whispered, "Go. You don't deserve this place." Daniel didn't wait. He ran, through the corridor, through the maintenance shaft, toward the outer wall where he had hidden the final part of his escape. A homemade grappling hook made from workshop scraps. He threw it over the inner fence and climbed, the rain soaking his clothes, his hands slipping on the wire. The alarm hadn't sounded yet. He was seconds from freedom. But then, a blinding flash lit up the yard. A searchlight. A guard tower had spotted movement. "Stop. Get on the ground," someone yelled through the megaphone. Daniel froze on the fence, one leg over, one still trapped. The wind howled. The rain poured. He looked back at the walls of ADX Florence, the prison that had stolen his life, and then forward at the darkness beyond the fence. For a moment, it looked like he was about to jump. But before anyone could react, the light flickered. And when it came back on, Daniel Reese was gone. Outside the walls, search teams spread through the desert. Dogs barked, helicopters hovered, and guards shouted through radios. But they found nothing. No footprints. No torn clothing. Not even a dropped tool. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The warden stared at the empty yard and whispered, "He beat the system." But had he? Because 2 miles away, hidden beneath an old maintenance tunnel no one had used in decades, a single flashlight flickered in the dark, and Daniel Reese took his first breath of freedom in 10 long years. He smiled. And then, from somewhere in the darkness, a voice said quietly, "You really thought you could do this alone, Daniel?" He froze. That voice, he knew it. It wasn't a god. It was someone who was supposed to be dead. Daniel froze where he stood, the flashlight trembling in his hand. The sound of that voice echoed off the tunnel walls, calm, cold, and too familiar. "Who's there?" he whispered, his pulse thundering in his ears. A figure stepped out of the shadows, wearing a soaked prison uniform, a faint smile on his face. "You didn't think you were the only one planning a way out, did you?" Daniel's heart nearly stopped. Noah Kane. Noah had been his neighbor 2 cells down in ADX Florence. A man with a history so dark that even the guards avoided his name. He was serving multiple life sentences for orchestrating a series of bombings across the Midwest. No one ever saw him talk, eat with others, or even look at anyone, except Daniel. Daniel had thought Noah was dead. 6 months earlier, the guards said he'd taken his own life. But now here he was, alive and standing just feet away. How are you alive?" Daniel stammered. Noah's grin widened. "The same way you got out, my friend. By studying. By waiting. By pretending to be broken." He stepped closer, his voice echoing through the tunnel. "You were clever enough to open the door. I was clever enough to make them forget about me." Daniel swallowed hard. "You knew about my plan." "I helped make it," Noah said simply. "You didn't really think the timing of that storm was luck, did you?" It hit Daniel like a brick. The storm, the generator flicker, the guard's absence, none of it was coincidence. Someone had orchestrated every detail. Noah had been there all along, pulling strings from the shadows. For a long moment, the 2 men stood in silence, the rain dripping through cracks above. Then Noah gestured down the tunnel. "Come on," he said. "We don't have much time. The dogs will be here within minutes." Daniel hesitated. Every instinct told him not to trust this man. But his choices were limited. The desert outside meant death by exposure, and going back meant life without freedom. He followed. The tunnel twisted beneath the prison's foundations, a leftover from when the site had been a construction depot decades before ADX was built. It led miles into the rocky foothills. Noah moved quickly, confident, like he had memoized every turn. "You planned this for years, didn't you?" Daniel asked quietly. Noah chuckled. 10 years. But I needed someone like you, someone who could open doors instead of blowing them up. So this was never about helping me, Daniel said. Noah didn't deny it. You were the key, Daniel. The system built to contain monsters needed a smarter monster to beat it. They emerged hours later into the freezing Colorado wilderness. The moon hung low, half covered by clouds. From where they stood, the massive gray walls of ADX Florence glowed faintly in the distance, an ugly reminder of everything behind them. No sirens now. No searchlights. Just silence. Daniel looked at Noah. Now what? You can't just walk into town. Your face is on every wanted list in the country. Noah turned toward the mountains. We're not going to town. There's a cabin about 20 miles north. No power, no signals. I left something there years ago, something that can buy us both a new life. Daniel frowned. What kind of something? Noah looked at him sideways. Evidence. Files the FBI never found. Things that could bury people who built that prison you just escaped from. Daniel didn't know whether to believe him, but he also didn't have another option. By sunrise, they reached an abandoned mine entrance half buried in snow. Noah motioned for silence. This way. Inside, Daniel could barely see. The air smelled like rust and dust. At the far end of the tunnel, Noah pried open a hidden crate beneath some rocks. Inside were bundles of paper, flash drives, and several thick manila envelopes marked classified. Daniel's eyes widened. Where did you get these? From the people who built your cage, Noah said simply. Government contracts. Secret projects. Experiments on inmates. All of it buried in ADX files. Daniel picked up one of the drives. You're saying the prison itself is part of a cover-up. Noah smiled. I'm saying ADX Florence isn't just a prison. It's a laboratory. And we were the rats. Before Daniel could respond, a faint hum filled the air, like a generator kicking on somewhere outside. Then came the unmistakable crunch of boots in the snow. Noah cursed under his breath. They found us. He grabbed the crate and shoved one of the drives into Daniel's hand. Run. If they catch us together, it's over. Take the evidence and head east. What about you? Daniel asked. I'll buy you time, Noah said, pulling a pistol from his jacket, a weapon Daniel hadn't even realized he had. I've been waiting 10 years to settle a score with the people who locked me away. Before Daniel could stop him, Noah stepped toward the entrance, disappearing into the light. Then came shouting. Gunfire. Echoes bouncing off the rocks. Daniel ducked behind a pile of debris, clutching the drive in his shaking hands. He could hear Noah's voice outside, loud, defiant, taunting the agents. Then, silence. Daniel peeked out from behind the rocks. Smoke drifted through the air. The snow was stained dark. Noah was gone. At least, that's what Daniel thought, until he looked closer. There were footprints in the snow, 2 sets heading in opposite directions. One toward the forest. One deeper into the mountains. The FBI thought they'd killed him. But Daniel knew better. Noah Kane had escaped again. 2 days later, the news exploded. Inmate escape attempt from ADX Florence, 1 fugitive at large. Daniel Reese's face was everywhere. News broadcasts, social media, FBI alerts. But no one mentioned Noah Kane. His file remained officially closed. Daniel sat in a small roadside diner outside Colorado Springs, wearing a hat pulled low, a borrowed jacket covering his prison tattoos. He stared at the flash drive in his hand, the one Noah had given him. Was it real? Could it prove everything? That ADX Florence wasn't just a prison, but part of something darker. He plugged it into a cheap laptop he'd bought off a trucker. The screen flickered. A folder appeared, labeled Project Blackstone. Daniel clicked it open. Inside were scanned memos, blueprints, and internal emails, all referencing behavioral conditioning through sensory deprivation and neural response testing in isolated subjects. He scrolled further, and then stopped. There was a list of names. Government officials. Private contractors. Even scientists. But one name at the top froze him cold. Noah Kane, Subject 01. Daniel blinked. It didn't make sense. Subject. He opened another file, a scanned report. Test subject exhibited high-level intelligence, manipulative tendencies, and psychopathic traits. Attempt to simulate reformation for observational study successful. It hit him all at once. Noah hadn't escaped ADX Florence. He'd been released. The FBI hadn't been chasing him, they'd been working with him. Outside, a car engine started. Daniel looked up and saw a black SUV parked across the road. Two men in suits stepped out, scanning the diner. His heart stopped. They were looking for him. He closed the laptop, slipped the flash drive into his pocket, and moved toward the back door. But as he reached for the handle, it swung open on its own. Standing there, smiling faintly, was Noah Kane. "Miss me," he said. Daniel froze. "You're supposed to be dead." Noah tilted his head. "That's what they always think." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You still have the drive, don't you?" Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you really doing, Noah?" Noah smiled, his eyes cold and calm. "Finishing what they started." The hum of engines outside grew louder. The FBI agents were closing in, and inside the small diner, two men, one who broke the system and one who built it, stood facing each other in silence. The lights flickered. Noah reached into his jacket. Daniel took a step back. And then, everything went dark.